Mr. Big. Mr. Big is a fake crime boss used by police to trick suspects into confessing. The idea is to build a friendship with the suspect and make them feel like they're part of a criminal organization. In a Mr. Big case, police watch a suspect for weeks to learn about their personality and habits. Once they have enough information, they set up a meeting with an undercover officer who pretends to casually meet the suspect and asks for a small favor, like fixing a flat tire. The officer then builds a friendship by offering fun activities, gifts, meals, and eventually a job. The undercover agent pays the suspect for simple tasks, like counting cash or making deliveries related to fake crimes. As the suspect gets more involved, they are treated like a rising star in a criminal organization. There could be as many as 50 undercover operatives involved. Eventually, the suspect meets Mr. Big, the fake crime boss who is actually a skilled police interrogator. Mr. Big convinces the suspect that the police have evidence against them and are about to arrest them, which could harm the gang. He might say he can help by framing someone else or pay the police could mess with the evidence, but he demands a confession as proof of loyalty or for his own protection. This final meeting is usually recorded. Once the police get a confession or believe the suspect is innocent, the lavish lifestyle ends. And if there's a confession, the suspect is arrested. The Mr. Big technique is often used as a last resort in cold cases or when police suspect someone but lack proof. It has been very effective in getting confessions in many cases, but it can also pressure innocent suspects to stay involved in crime, as they may think a false confession is worth the risk to keep their new lifestyle and friends. Good cop, bad cop. Good cop, bad cop. Also known as the Mutt and Jeff technique, is a psychological tactic used in interrogation and negotiation. It involves two interrogators taking different approaches to get someone to cooperate. One interrogator adopts a hostile or accusatory demeanor, emphasizing threats of punishment, while the other adopts a more sympathetic demeanor, emphasizing reward. The bad cop is aggressive, making accusations and insults to make the person uncomfortable. This creates a chance for the good cop to step in and be supportive, which can make the person feel safer and more willing to talk. They might trust the good cop or feel scared of the bad cop. In negotiations, the good cop tries to persuade the suspect to agree by suggesting that the bad cop will come back if they don't. The disadvantage of this technique is that it can be easily identified, and the bad cop might end up pushing the person away instead of getting them to cooperate. REID Technique. The REID Technique, named after John Reid, a former Chicago police officer and polygraph expert. This technique has been one of the most popular techniques for interrogating suspects in the United States since 1940s. The REID technique has 3 stages. It starts with fact analysis, where investigators gather and review all the details of the case. Then, they conduct a behavior analysis interview to observe how the subject reacts. Finally, if the first 2 phases show information that indicates that the subject is involved in the commission of the crime, they use the 9 steps of interrogation. It begins with a positive confrontation, where the investigator confidently presents the suspect with evidence or a statement indicating their guilt. This assertive approach aims to create a psychological shift, making the suspect feel that denial is futile. Following this, the investigator develops a theme that provides the suspect with moral justification for their actions. This theme is designed to minimize the moral severity of the crime, making it easier for the suspect to admit to it. When the suspect attempts to deny involvement, the interrogator interrupts and refutes these claims, preventing the suspect from gaining confidence in their denials. The next step involves overcoming objections. If the suspect raises objections, the investigator addresses and counters them with logical arguments and evidence. To maintain control and focus, the investigator uses techniques to capture the suspect's attention, such as moving closer or making eye contact, and speaks in a sympathetic and understanding tone. This empathetic approach aims to build rapport and encourage the suspect to open up. As the interrogation progresses, the investigator watches for signs that the suspect is becoming passive or more contemplative. At this point, the interrogator continues to express understanding and empathy, reinforcing the notion that confessing is in the suspect's best interest. A pivotal moment in the process is presenting the suspect with an alternative question. This involves offering 2 choices, both implying guilt but differing in the moral severity of the act. Once the suspect chooses an option, the investigator encourages them to provide detailed information about the crime, thus transforming the admission into a full confession. Finally, the oral confession is documented in writing or recorded to ensure it is clear, accurate, and voluntary. But here's the thing. The REID technique is controversial. Critics say it can sometimes lead to false confessions, especially if the suspect is vulnerable, like being young or having a mental impairment. Minimization and maximization. Minimization is all about making the person feel like what they did wasn't such a big deal. The idea is to downplay the seriousness of their actions so they might be more willing to talk. This technique can help the person relax and open up more, thinking they might not be in too much trouble, while maximization is the opposite. It involves stressing how severe the consequences could be if the person doesn't cooperate. The goal here is to create a sense of urgency and fear, making the person more likely to reveal information or confess to wrongdoing to avoid the harsh penalties. Pause technique. The pause technique in interrogation is pretty straightforward. Basically, it's about using silence to an advantage. When an interrogator asks a question, they might wait a moment before jumping in with the next one. This pause can make the person being questioned feel uncomfortable, and the awkward silence might push them to keep talking, sometimes revealing more info or getting more detailed than they planned. This technique helps the interrogator pick up on clues or inconsistencies in what the person says. Piece technique. The piece method is a 5 stages of interviewing suspects that focuses on building a connection and letting them share their side of the story without interruptions. The piece method was created because they found that using pressure tactics such as REID technique often led to false confessions. The first of the 5 stages is planning and preparation, which requires investigators to find out as much as they can about the incident under investigation, including who needs to be interviewed and why. The second stage is called engage and explain, and in this one, the interviewer tries to build a rapport with the suspect and does this by asking the suspect how they would like to be addressed, how much time they have for the interview, or by giving him reassurance if he seems anxious or nervous. Third stage, called account clarification and challenge, is the one where interviewer attempts to obtain a full account of events from the subject without interrupting. Once the subject has explained what happened, the interviewer can ask follow-up questions if contradictory information is available. The fourth stage is called closure, and it involves summarizing the subject's account of what happened and also involves verifying that everything that needs to be discussed has been covered. The last stage is called evaluation, where the interviewer looks at whether they got what they wanted from the interview, checks the investigation with any new information, and thinks about how well the interview went and if anything could have been done better. Rapid fire. Rapid-fire interrogation is basically when someone is asked a series of questions very quickly, one after another, without much pause. The fast pace can create stress and confusion, which may catch the person off guard and make them reveal information, sometimes without them even realizing it. This technique can be used in a variety of situations, such as interviews, police questioning, or even casual conversation to dig deeper into thoughts or someone's feelings. Pride and ego down. Pride and ego down is a term used by the U.S. Army to interrogate prisoners by attacking their self-esteem to make them more defensive and more likely to provide information to prove the interrogator wrong. This method works well with people who already feel insecure or weak. It might involve pointing out something they're not good at, questioning their loyalty, or any other perceived shortcoming. However, this approach has risks. If it doesn't work, the interrogator might lose credibility and find it hard to switch tactics. In this case, the prisoner's confidence and sense of self-worth remain intact. They don't feel the need to prove themselves or offer more information because they don't see the interrogator's comments as a threat to their pride. Repetition. Repetition techniques in interrogation are basically when an interrogator asks the same question multiple times or rephrases it in different ways. The goal is to make subject forget what they said before or feel pressured and confusion to fill in the blanks, leading them to give inconsistent answers or reveal more information. Loaded questions. Loaded questions are like traps disguised as inquiries. They're phrased in a way that assumes something not yet proven. For instance, instead of asking, "Did you see John at the scene?" the detective might say, "How did you and John plan the robbery?" See the difference? The first question is a normal question, while the second question assumes the person was involved with John in a crime. In real life, this technique can pressure someone into admitting things they didn't do or don't remember clearly. It's all about how the questions are subtly framed to catch someone off guard.